Welcome to episode 19 of the Young Adults Guide to Planet Earth, the podcast where we try to figure out life through good conversations. I'm your host, Clayton Hamrick, and joining me, as always, is Sid Warren. What's up, Sid?
How's it going?
No, I said, how's it going?
I said it too.
Okay. And we have Hunter Baumgartner. What's up, Hunter?
What's up, guys? Nice.
So I say what's up, and then you say what's up?
Yeah.
Clayton,
That's how you roll,
stop grilling our ribs, man.
I'm just saying, man. If I say what's up, I want to hear what's up.
What's up? Like, what's up? And you say, what's up? That's
All
how
right.
it works, man.
Well, I'm doing good. It's a rainy day, but I have high spirits.
There you go, man.
Pouring day.
That's
It's
what's
pouring
up.
right now. Or it was. Is it pouring? Yeah, it looks like it's pouring outside.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about books. Bunch of books with pages and stuff.
Because we're book nerds. We're a bunch of
And
dorks.
but first, you guys know it. We got the quote of the week, and this is about books. Did you guys know that Confucius once said, "You cannot open a book without learning something"?
I didn't know that.
I
Why are
mean-
you being so awkward?
I mean, is that true though? Like, can you open a book without learning something?
No,
He didn't mean
you
it like
can't.
that. He just means like if you open a book, you're gonna learn.
Well, philosophically, if you open a book and then you put it down without reading it or looking at it, have you not just learned something about yourself?
Yes.
There you
I
go,
don't-
man.
I-
Confucius knew what he was
that-
talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
You learn you're
That's
lazy.
deeper
you don't
than
like
I
to
took
read.
it.
So before we get into it, if you're on a podcast app, click the follow button or subscribe or whatever the heck it is. And if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so that you get notified when we post new podcast episodes. And also leave a comment wherever you are because we want to talk to you. We want to have a conversation. And if you're on iTunes, leave us a review and make sure it's a 5-star review. Even if you hate this episode with every part of your being, still give us a 5-star because that would be super cool.
There's going to be
And
a lot
leave
of
us-
trolls. It's going to give us
Yeah.
1 stars.
Well, leave us a like today because you can see us. So, hello everybody.
To be completely honest, I would rather have 10 1-star reviews than 0.
Yeah.
I want to know people listen to us.
Yeah.
That at least means that people listen. But don't give us 1-star reviews because that'd be nice. So we're talking about books today. Before we get into our list, so we're going to talk about some books that we've grown up with and favorite books and whatnot. What does reading mean to you? Like,
Ratings.
reading.
Reading.
Oh, reading. To me, it's growing. That's what I would
Growing.
put it down as. Because I don't read. Sometimes I read books for like enjoyment, but usually I try to find a book that I enjoy, but I also feel like will stimulate me. And many times I feel like any book's just going to stimulate my brain.
Yeah.
Because like right now I'm reading The Foundation, which is a science fiction, but it's also like written like on like a very high level. And it to me it's just like when I read it, I'm learning new vocabulary. And it's challenging. It's not like I can just read some fun story. It's like I'm actually like having to engage in like this politics surrounding these like galaxies and stuff. So that's what I want out of reading.
Yeah.
I read like to escape. But now, I mean, well, that's what I did when I was a kid. Is I read a lot of books that involved like fantasy and like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars with Han Solo and his 2 twin kids. That's no longer canon, so I guess that sucks. But like now, I find myself reading like you are, like to learn, to like grow, and to expand my knowledge of things and stuff. So that's what I read for.
Cool.
What about you, Clayton?
Yeah, I probably read to learn as well, and I learn a lot from fiction, and I think that's something a big misconception people have is that you can't get anything out of fiction like learning wise, but a lot of times you get different mindsets, you get different perspectives from fiction that you wouldn't otherwise get through nonfiction. So I just definitely like it opens my brain up, gives me new perspective. And I love reading.
Yeah, fiction makes it a lot easier to read too.
Yeah,
It's kind of torture to read nonfiction.
like
sometimes.
so. Like I was thinking the other day, and I actually made a YouTube video about this a while back, and I said in that video that like, say you get really into a Netflix show, and you binge watch it for hours, and you binge watch the first season. Like, what if you spent that same amount of like time and passion in reading a novel? Like, I get the same enjoyment out of that. Like, it takes more work, but like I'm still experiencing a story. So That's how I like to think about reading. Is it's the same as like movies and TV, unless
Hmm.
I'm reading nonfiction, and then it's more like a documentary or something.
For me, I like seeing visuals. I've always been a visual kind of person.
That's a good transition into what I forgot to say a second ago. If you like visuals, we're recording this episode on a camera, and we're gonna be posting it to YouTube so you can finally see us talk.
You're gonna be seeing more of us too, for that record.
I've never been one to watch podcasts because when I watch podcasts, I just find myself like watching them talk. I don't understand it, you know.
Yeah.
When I should just be doing something productive with a podcast in my headphones.
We can do like Marcus does. He'll turn it on his TV and he'll just like start cleaning his room or like doing stuff like chores
Yeah,
basically.
but why not just put it on your like speaker? Why do you have to have the visual?
I think he
I mean, I
enjoys-
understand it because like you just said, you like visuals.
Yeah, but it goes beyond that. Like for me, sometimes like when I watch a show that I like, and I like if it's a show that's like look at Friends. People don't go to Friends to have it in the background. People go to Friends because they're actually in love with those characters that they want to. Almost like having the TV on and watching Friends is like almost being a part of their like that charisma, that love that they have.
Yeah.
They want to feel that too, so they imagine themselves being there with them. And like that's what I do sometimes when I watch podcasts. Is like if it's a really good podcast and I'll enjoy it. Sometimes I'm sitting there like, I mean I don't watch podcasts a lot, but like when I did, I felt like almost like I was there sitting out.
Yeah. I
down
mean, I
with
guess
them.
it's cool to be able to see like facial reactions and like
Yeah.
body language.
It makes it 10 times better when you can see their face when somebody's
Yeah.
talking about something weird and the other person's like, what?
Well, and also when they have like visual elements, like these books sitting here beside me. If you're just listening to the audio version of this, you can't see these books that are sitting beside me.
Exactly.
So you're missing out.
Especially if
So
they
you
like
should go to
start
YouTube
pulling up stuff.
and watch it and leave a comment and like it and subscribe.
Plug in.
All right, always plug. Let's get into some of our favorite books, and I'll just go ahead and say I'm gonna be long-winded on this, and I realized when I was preparing for this episode, this is like the most passionate I've been about any topic we have because I just love books and I have so many to talk about.
That's great.
So I'm gonna try to wrangle myself and not be too long-winded. But let's start with Sid so that I don't talk for 30 minutes about something.
Yeah. Okay, I have a long list. Do we want to structure this somehow?
Just
Should I do one now and
just give us
start from there?
one. We'll rotate, kind of like we did with the episode about TV shows, which if you haven't listened to, you should go listen now.
Yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
if I can't get through this list, I'm just gonna rattle them all off at the end because I think
Yeah,
they-
that's probably what I'm gonna end up doing. So.
yeah, they deserve the light of day. But I'm gonna start with one that many of you probably have never heard of. It's super obscure, and it's the Bible.
What?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah. Okay, so you've probably heard of it. They're everywhere. I think it's the most printed book, right?
Most printed book ever in all time.
So to me, this book is kind of controversial because I could say it's not my favorite book to read because sometimes it's a struggle, but when it comes down to it, it's the most important book of my life, and it just deserves the slot as the first book I mentioned.
You know what I like about the Bible though? Like, if you've read like a one version a lot, like say you've read the NIV, the New International Version, like that's what you've been reading for the past 2 years. You can go pick up a version like the Message or something, and it's really cool to do that because then you get to read your favorite passages and your favorite stories and whatever from the Bible from a different voice, kind of.
Yeah, and this just to me represents a book that is bigger than the words on paper. It's really like it's a living thing. It's the Word of God, and it's really special to me. So I think you should read things that enrich you, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Is like I try to find fiction because I like fiction more than nonfiction that I feel like I grow from. The Bible's not fiction; it's nonfiction, but that's something that's just that important to me, and I don't know, it grounds me, it roots me, and it's taught me so many things, and it's what my faith is built on. So
I'm glad you said that because, dude, the Bible to me is like a codex. Like, to me, the Bible is like what you put in, you'll get 10 times back.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes when I was young, when you're young and you like look at the Bible and you start reading it and you're just like we can all agree that sometimes we're like, oh, what is it? I don't want to read the Bible. You know, you get to the point where you're just like, I don't want to read this. It's too like, old language and stuff like that, and it's just too. it seems out of context and stuff. But then when you actually start like learning the context, when you research it and when you like get books, like I had to when I was in college, I had to get books that would describe what was happening in the background of the story itself. Like and when you go to Jerusalem and you actually see the places, it's like a whole new thing. Like it's like what you said is the Bible's
Yeah.
a living thing. It makes it 10 times better if you actually like, because I took a religious studies class on that, and only just the four, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and I learned beyond what I thought I was going to learn, because there's so much you don't know that's behind the scenes.
Yeah, and
Unless you
adding to
learn-
that,
Yeah,
I don't, I'm not here to like shove this down anybody's throat, but I mean, the Bible it's bigger than religion too. I mean, even if you're not a Christian, if you read the Bible, you can get something out of it. I mean, especially in the New Testament, there's so many lessons that are extremely relevant today, and that if you follow those, you're on your way to being a good person that contributes to the world. And then if you add your faith into that, like, it's literally life. Like, that's the only thing I can say about it.
Yeah. This is a perfect time for me to talk about something else I wanted to say kind of before we got into books, but this is like perfect. So I'm going to read a small excerpt from a book titled How to Read a Book by Mortimer Alder. Anyways, so she says, or he says, what is Mortimer a male? I don't know.
It sounds male.
Mortimer.
You're right. For some reason I thought it was a
If there's a
female.
female named Mortimer, sorry.
Okay, anyways. So this is what they say. Reading a book should be a conversation between you and the author. Presumably, he knows more about the subject than you do. If not, you probably shouldn't be bothering with the book. But understanding is a two-way operation. The learner has to question himself and question the teacher. He even has to be willing to argue with the teacher once he understands what the teacher is saying. And then they talk about marking a book is literally an expression of your differences or your agreements with the author. So they're talking about like writing in the margins and stuff. But that's another way that I really like to think about books is as a conversation, where a lot of times we'll perceive them as like the author is just speaking to us, and it's a one-way ticket, But I think if you start to view books as a conversation where you can actually question what the book is saying and you can make your own statements about what the book is saying, it turns into this two-way conversation between you and the author. And I think the Bible is a really good example of how a lot of people perceive the Bible that way, where they read and they perceive how they perceive the Bible, and then they question and they discuss, and it just turns into more of a conversation than many other books that I've read.
Yeah, I think the Bible is like that, and on the other hand, I think it's very much just like it is what it is. So I agree, but I don't agree in a weird way, because I think you're right. I think the Bible should be discussed, and there's so many different ways to interpret different things. But then on the other hand, it's like that is the Word of God.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree.
But I think ultimately, and this is going beyond books and more into the religious side, I think God wants us to question Him so that He can give us the answers.
Yeah.
Instead of just like being robots and saying, yes, I accept what you tell me, like, you know. So
and that goes with other books really well too. I mean, that extra element of engagement can make the difference between just like mindlessly reading like we all did when we were in middle school.
Well, I think
actually growing from it.
I think I originally heard this from John Green, who wrote Fault in Our Stars and multiple other books. But he talked about how he didn't want, and I could be wrong, this could have been another author I'm thinking about, but talking about how they don't want people just to read and soak in what they want people to question and disagree with what they wrote, because then it's so much more than a book. It turns into that conversation. I mean, that's what this podcast is all about,
Yeah, I was gonna say that it's just like our podcast. We want people to, even if they hate our podcast, we want some input, some kind of engagement, and eventually we want people to like kind of start guiding our content. Like, what do you want from us? Because we're ultimately not doing this for ourselves. We're doing it because we want to make a difference in some little way.
And I think ultimately most people that take the time to write a book, that's what they want.
Yeah.
They want engagement and they want conversation. They don't want just a one-way kind of medium. Yeah. All right, Hunter, that was a good one. I'm glad we started with the Bible, because I think that's on all of our lists.
Gets the big one out of the way.
Yeah, okay, Hunter, what's one on your list, man?
Dude, I can't decide. I'm an undecisive person.
Just talk about
I'm
one.
just gonna
They're not in
randomly
order.
say one. You know, I think the one we were talking about comes to mind. The Hatchet book. That's one good. Well, actually, no.
Go for it, man, because
Um,
I have so many. Like, you're not stealing from me.
Well, I kind of want to talk about Star Wars though, because I just remember. Okay,
Just pick one,
Here's
and
a
we'll come back
memory-
around to the other ones.
this memory comes to me every single time I think about these books. Star Wars. It's mainly the Han Solo twins books. I can't remember what their titles were.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've never read them.
But basically the story takes place with Han having kids with Leia, and then they're both twins. One turns to the dark side, and the other one turns to the light, kind of like what they're doing now with the movies. But
Don't make assumptions, but keep going.
oh man, here we go, Star Wars topics. But basically, I just remember being in the library, in the middle school library, and hunkering down on the floor and just opening that book because I was trying to find a book that I would like to read. I just couldn't find many. And then I just saw Star Wars. I was like, oh, Star Wars. I like Star Wars.
Yeah.
I pick it up. I start reading. I'm like 2 chapters in, and they're like trying to find me in school because
Yeah.
like I've been sitting in the library for a long time. And so I don't know. I enjoy like especially the kids novels that are like they're like almost teen.
Yeah.
But they're old enough to like do on their own, basically.
Yeah.
Kind of like being like a 15-year-old. I guess that is teen, honestly. But that age was like right on the break of like it's like exploration, learning, opening a whole new like world. Like because when you're in elementary school, you don't know what it's like to be in middle school, and then when you get in middle school, it's like holy crap, there's a whole new world in this. Like there's like romance, there's popularity contest. It's just like all
I'm
these
surprised
things.
you didn't say romance books were your favorite.
Oh no, whatever. But
Have you guys ever read a romance?
no,
No.
I've read Twilight. This will be Twilight's time in the sun.
I just can't get into
We're
it.
not
but I
talking
guess
about Twilight, man.
I might bring Twilight
It's
up.
all action for me. That's funny that you say that because I feel like most guys read action books and most girls read romance books. Not because
I have a romance book right here. I'll tell you which one later.
that one.
No.
Dang.
Okay, I want to make a quick connection, and this is kind of going off topic a little bit. When you're talking about picking out a book in middle school, like when your teacher took you in there, I just realized it feels a lot like when you're on Netflix and you can't find a show to watch.
Yeah.
I remember in middle school, I'll be walking back and forth, picking up books, reading the back, reading the summary.
You always look at the front of the book and you're like, God, nah, I'm good. And you don't even open
But
it
then
up.
some of them, you'd be like, oh, that's cool, and then you read the back, and you're like, no, doesn't
Yeah.
sound good.
So
What is this siren doing, interrupting us?
I used to look the width. Let's be honest. Like
Dude,
some of us did
the
that.
width that big? Nope.
And the
This
AR
big?
points.
AR points is a big deal.
low.
Yeah, I used to find the most AR points for the smallest book, and
It
I'd be
was
like,
Yeah.
it was
there's the
this
ticket.
right here.
Take your tape measure,
that was
like
the biggest one.
this.
for me.
This 0.5 inch book is worth 2 points. That is incredible.
Yeah.
Speaking of AR points, you're gonna hate me for this, but the reason that I said I didn't read these books is because for AR points, I literally took the book with me.
Oh
and
gosh, you cheated,
and I
dude.
got the
I
AR
remember.
points.
I distinctly remember the 7th Harry Potter book wasn't out when we were in elementary school, but I think the 5th book was worth 33 AR points.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I remember that, but I remember it.
Yeah. And so, like, I had to get my AR points up, man. So I was wanting to get, like, big points. So I was like, all right. Basically, you know how you do in college where you're doing, like, I don't know, like, Schwump or what was it called? Shazam? The thing you go to and you look up a book review and it pretty much gives you the chapter-based summaries.
I use Spark Notes for
Spark
that.
Notes. Okay. I was thinking of something
Did you
else.
say Schwoomp?
It literally
It's a
looked
better
like
name.
Schwump on the webpage.
We need to call them up and say,
Schwoomp.
we're going to rebrand you guys.
Schwump.
Schwump, baby. But,
So you know that existed like a long time ago in paper? Like Cliff Notes was a thing that you could go to a bookstore and buy.
They still sell them.
Yeah, they still have
Dude,
them.
they used to,
But before the internet, people still did that.
I remember buying books that were like game hacking books where you just like it's a book
Oh,
full
yeah.
of codes,
I had
cheat
those.
sheet
codes.
codes.
I would buy one every time the book fair would come to school. I'd buy
Yeah.
a cheat code book.
Scholastic's book fair. I used to get so many books. Like that whole thing is where my books came from. Cause
See, we're
Scholastics,
such
man,
nerds.
we're not nerds. We're kids that are
No,
smart.
I'm
that
saying
want
I'm
to
a nerd.
explore.
All right, I want to talk about one of mine.
Go ahead.
We know you do.
Yeah, you've been excited
Wait,
the
let's
whole
make
time.
Clayton wait. Let's talk about something else.
All
I
right,
feel like if we
all
don't get them on,
Let's do
we're
this.
just gonna keep
Let's
going
just
for
keep-
2 hours.
All right,
going
all right.
over.
In all seriousness.
Okay, so I want to talk real quick. The reason I'm putting this first is not necessarily because it's my favorite book, but it came at a time where I was the most in love with just reading fantasy, which is Harry Potter #7, and specifically #7 because, in my opinion, it's the best out of the series. Like it has emotional. I mean, it's like the cool magical stuff mixed with the super emotional stuff mixed with the victory of the ending and all that stuff. And I read Harry Potter 7. I stood in line at a Books A Million at midnight and got this book at a midnight release. Like today we go to a midnight release of a movie. I did that for a freaking book.
That's cool.
And that's the only book I've ever done it for. Actually, I might have done it for 6 and 7 of Harry Potter, but I was just so in love with these books and just how they captured my imagination. I mean, I would stay up till like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. reading these books. And this is really what got me into reading and got me in love with reading. So I wanted to talk about that one. But I also want to talk real quick about these 3. If you're watching the video version, I have 3 books on the bottom of my stack. And they're the first 3 Harry Potter books, and they are illustrated.
Dude,
So
let me see one.
So okay, just grab the top one off there.
This is the
That's The Prisoner of Azkaban, which is my favorite of the movies, if you're wondering. But
dude.
so okay,
The first page is
the whole books are illustrated, so they're meant to be like coffee table books, but it's literally the whole entire book with illustrations throughout.
Dude.
And these have been Christmas presents for the past like couple years from my parents, and I think my sister got me one.
I'm getting goosebumps.
But these are some of the coolest books I own because they're like full-fledged novels, but they're literally illustrated, and it's so cool.
That is.
So you can remain looking at this after the podcast.
Sorry, I
the,
just got
the
distracted.
the audio only listeners, they're not understanding.
The video's not enjoying it either because I don't even get to
Just
see
show
it.
them like the first couple pages.
Oh my gosh, Clayton.
You're ruining my book.
What are you doing, Sid?
I was trying to turn it around. Let's
Okay.
just do this and not do this right now.
Yeah, let's just not do this right now.
Anyways, so Harry Potter was just a huge part of my elementary school, middle school life. I don't know, I loved it. Still love it. So
See the first page.
I'm done with my first one.
All right, cool. Oh crap. So, let's go. One of my favorite genre of books is science fiction. So I'm going to just use this slot to say science fiction because I want to say multiple books, because I want to say an author. So H.G. Wells is like
Dude.
my favorite, and not because his writing's amazing or anything, but because to me he just like embodies the type of science fiction that I love, like aliens, robots, like super far out technology, and just such cool things. And he also ties it in with some of his political opinions, which I think are really funny when they come up, because sometimes it's like super in your face, and it's interesting because he's an opinionated guy. I don't know a whole lot about him. I need to do more research, but
Isn't he the guy that's responsible for creating Cthulhu?
no, that's H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, okay, I got those
Yeah.
confused. Dang.
But so like some of the notable ones, like the Island of Dr. Moreau is like one of my favorites, and it's really grotesque, but it's such a good story. And then like War of the Worlds, classic. Time Machine, a classic.
Okay.
And then one that's unrelated that I think we've all read is this isn't by H.G. Wells, for the record. It's 1984,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just like the perfect dystopian future science fiction novel. Like it just kind of, I don't know if it was the first one. I think there was some what's discrepancy or disagreement about whether it was first or not, but
Yeah.
like there's a lot of similar books in 1984 and a lot of similar movies for that matter. But
Yeah.
it's very classic, and it teaches you a lot of things. Like these science fiction are exactly what I'm talking about, like the types of books like I like to read that I grow from, but they're also super fun and interesting.
There are also the types of books, so like from 1984, for example. Did that come out in the 50s?
60s, I think.
So, like,
Was
somewhere
that,
around there.
Punk? Is that like a
No,
Oh, God, remind me what it is again.
it's okay. So this is a terrible summary, but it's basically about like this culture that's they all have to listen to this central person,
It's
and
where the term Big Brother came from.
yeah,
So like the government being Big Brother.
and they eventually like kind of rebel against the system, and it's just talking about like, but it's also set in a futuristic time, so like everything's different. I'm not doing. It's been years since I've read it, so I'm not doing a good
I
job.
got you.
But what I was gonna say about it is that's a good example of you could literally read that book today, and it's so relevant to the times. Where
Yeah.
like sci-fi throughout history, no matter when it was written, just by nature of like the kind of books they are, they always seem to stand up to the test of time.
And they almost create what they talk about.
Yeah, and I think a reason this book is so popular and why it's such a common theme in movies and stuff is because of how real it feels. I think we all have this pessimism that feels that one day we're all just going to be, I don't know, something bad's going to happen. It's just going to be dystopian and we're going to be ruled over. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's so basically also in the book, you know, you're not allowed to have anything. Remind me if I'm thinking right, because I might be getting a movie confused, but you're not allowed to have anything that, like, is, like, you're not allowed to have books, right? You're not allowed to have
I think that's
Did they
1984.
destroy all the paintings in the books?
something. Basically, they
Art.
wanted to strip the mind from people and just rule over them. And
People, you can't like have free will. You can't
Yeah.
have free like thought. Like you're just like mindless robots, basically
that
ruled
sounds
by the
terrible.
government.
but it's a good book because it's talking about somebody in that and their feelings, and it really makes you know that person and like the journey they go through after they're kind of like breaking these chains. And I recommend it. I think it was a great read.
Sounds like it created or spawned a lot of
Oh yeah,
like.
it's basically like a genre of movie now. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it's the
Like-
grandfather of sci-fi. Like
Yeah.
people have derived so much from that one novel and gotten so much inspiration from it.
that's that one.
Cool, Hunter. What's
Dude.
next, man? Just pick one.
Percy Jackson and the Olympians.
Nice.
I loved that series.
I
Never
did
read
too.
it.
It's good. It's like, you ever read Children of the Lamp?
Nope.
That's sad.
I was busy reading
Big boy books.
William Faulkner and Emerson.
Yeah, those are some thick
and
books.
Hemingway.
Yeah, I don't.
Anyways, I'm just
But,
kidding. What are you talking about?
But Percy Jackson, that was a good one I read because I just found that like I loved history growing up too. Like I was all big into the History Channel. I'd watch like history on like different cultures and stuff. And what really was interesting is like I'm like a fanboy for like Greek, like
Mm.
the Greek gods and goddesses. Like
Yeah.
those are really interesting because you see those in our culture sometimes. And I mean, I don't know. I just like kind of a fanboy of that. And
It's like
You
the
make
old
a-
time superheroes. Like we
Yeah.
talked about that last week.
yeah, exactly. Because those were like superheroes to the Greeks. And like now, if you think about it now, we still have people like that, or not people, but like characters like that in our lives that are beyond human, and we all root for. But like the Flash is basically Hermes, and like Poseidon is
Aquaman.
Aquaman. Like you see this in the movies now, and people are like, "Oh, this movie's awesome," but it, like they get it from this Greek. But basically, my point is like I loved when they take Greek mythology and they put it into the average everyday thing, and it just like those like mingling of like the ancient mythology versus like the modern world. It was so cool to see like
It made me feel like a part of it. Like I remember I wanted to be that kid's friend, but he like turned out he was like a demigod.
dude, I wanted to be him.
Yeah,
Forget being
exactly.
his friend.
Yeah.
I want to be him. I wanted because I was so like also growing up like I loved like the ocean and water and stuff. Like I'm low key like I would if I wanted to be an avatar, it'd be an airbender or a waterbender. But like back to the point, is like yeah, I really liked Poseidon out of most of them, and it was just good to have like him being the only like kid from Poseidon. It was just like so cool. I don't know. I just enjoyed the book series, but yeah. And he actually the author made 2 more books.
Yeah.
One
saw
about
that.
a book series based on like Egyptian mythology, and then a continuation of the Greek mythology in another book series with more people, more characters. But they actually made a movie series of Percy Jackson and Olympians, And so you can see how it was kind of popular to where they just made it into a movie series. Like, yeah.
Cool. Never read them.
I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I never read 1984 too, but it sounds interesting.
Something interesting about the superhero mythology thing. Thor is Thor. So that,
Yeah.
that confirms our theory.
Dude, let me tell you about Thor. Okay.
Wait, let's not get into a comic book discussion.
Dang, no, it's not comic book.
Okay.
It's like history of religion.
Okay.
So, back when Christianity was making its way to, I want to say, Western Europe, where the Scottish people were and the Irish people were. Actually, more Irish. I think it's Irish. Anyways, the point is, the religion was like, oh no, what am I saying? It's not. It's in Scandinavia. Yeah, the Scandinavian religion was like Odin, Thor, and all that, and they wore like necklaces of the hammer and stuff, and it was really like the people in Greece did with the Greek mythology. But
Cool.
when they brought Christianity over there, they started intermingling like Christianity with that mythology, because they knew that if they did the same thing they did with other countries where they just forced it upon them, they would like rebel. So they kind of like mingled it in, and like Thor actually was a bad person. But like they kind of made him into like a Jesus figure in like their religion. I just thought it'd be really cool to.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But like I could see that now in the movies too. Like I don't know, it's just pretty cool to think about.
Yeah, true that, homie.
This dude.
Clayton just wants to talk about his book.
Yeah.
No, I just don't have any input on Percy Jackson just because I never read them. I mean, I like the concept. I never
Have you read
understood.
Hatchet?
Yeah.
Have you read Hatchet?
Yes.
Well, let's just talk about Hatchet.
Well, you've had your turn.
I mean, it's not even about turn. I just want input from all you guys.
All right, I'm done.
It's not worth it if I just talk about something that half of us read.
Well, what if I talk about a book that you haven't read? You gonna talk about it?
I can try.
Well, I mean, I was trying to talk about Percy Jackson. And you cut me off.
Well, I did.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
I was just gonna talk. I was just saying is I never understood the concept of the books, and that's why I never read them. I thought they sounded terrible, to be completely honest. I didn't know they were about Greek, like had anything to do with Greek mythology, to be completely honest, because I was really into that stuff too, like in middle school and stuff. And I feel like the reason I didn't read them in middle school is because that was the time. Elementary school was prime time for books because you basically got to choose what you wanted to read. Whereas in middle school, we started this transition into you got to read what the teacher tells you.
Yeah.
And you got to read like curriculum-based stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so like I read a lot less of like books I really wanted to read and a lot more of books I had to read, which kind of sucks. So I feel like I missed out on a good deal of good books that were targeted at that age group just because of that.
Yeah, and it was kind of the trendy book at the time too, which might, I can understand if you wanted to go more after the classics, because that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I just kind of got like to the point where I was like, and I hate the way that the system's like this, but I just needed quick, easy reads for AR points.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why
I got
picked those.
really bored with like. Oh, well, I guess I didn't find what I was looking for in those kind of books.
Yeah.
The
I've spent the
classic
last 3 years like catching up on the classics, which I wish I would have just read earlier. But
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to talk about my book now.
awesome.
Actually, so this one's a category, Star Wars in general. And so this one, I never read any of the non-canon Star Wars books, the old school Star Wars books. And the reason was, one, they weren't really canon. Like, they were just all these crazy stories that didn't really connect with each other. And that didn't really appeal to me. So when Disney took over and axed all old canon and said, this is not canon anymore, and they created their new canon, I was like, okay, now's the time to get in on the ground level and start reading these Star Wars books, because all this stuff matters to the actual series. So the first book I think I picked up and read was Lost Stars by Claudia Gray, and it's the romance book I was talking about. Something about Star Wars romance, man.
Is that the one where it's talked? Dang.
These two
Is it
they grow up on a Imperial planet,
that one?
and they both become Imperial pilots. They become TIE fighter pilots.
Yeah.
And then one of them like crashes or something and becomes a rebel, and the other one's still a TIE fighter pilot. So it's like a Romeo and Juliet story of like you've got this person on the Rebel Alliance and this person in the Imperial Army.
How is that not a movie yet? I
It
feel like,
should be, man. It's so
yeah.
good. And then like so the last battle in this book is the Battle of Jakku, which is where Rey is from in the movies, and like that's where they crash the starfighters and the AT-ATs. Like that's the last battle in this book is where all that stuff in the movie is
Why don't
from.
they just make a movie out of that? I hate how
Everybody would love that.
Like,
Well, I
why do
mean,
they keep making movies?
So that's my point about these new canon Star Wars books is so another one I've got here is Lords of the Sith, and this is all about Darth Vader and Darth Sidious in like the first couple years that Darth Vader was his apprentice, and about how much Darth Vader struggled with being evil, and about how much he was still Anakin on the inside. But there's so many of these new canon books that should
What
just
does canon mean? Real quick.
so like what exists really in the universe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like if like let's look at Twilight, since we were talking about it earlier. What if somebody came out and said like made a book about 10 years later when I don't know, they're like having a war between the wolves and the vampires break out into war again, and it's not the original author.
Okay,
then
I get it. I just never heard that
considered
phrase before.
non-canonical.
Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are countless of these new canon books that are good enough to be movies, but that's just the point is like they're trying to appeal to the reading audience, and they don't need to make a movie for every good story they have to tell. And there've been so many good books come out of it, and these are just two of my favorites. Lords of the Sith, I'm a huge Darth Sidious fan and a huge Darth Vader fan, and that really shed a lot of light on those two characters, and that was one of my favorites over the past couple of years.
Cool.
All right.
Just keep talking
Go on
about
next.
it.
We gotta give Sid a chance to talk, man.
Oh yeah, sorry, Sid.
All right. Let's see. Let's just go with The Good Earth. So this is a classic. It can be considered like a financial book, but it could also be considered like I don't know, like self help or even like religious in certain ways, because it's a book about like ancient China, and just kind of this person's progression from like absolute poverty to becoming very wealthy, and then it just shows his progression through that and how there's so many life lessons in it. Like I'm never going to compare anything to the Bible, but this book is just chocked full of life lessons and just redeeming things that you can learn from. And I think everybody should read this book.
What's it called?
The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck.
Cool.
And it's just really interesting. I mean, because when he gets all this money and stuff, we kind of see that he might have been happier when they were just living in absolute poverty, like just like looking up at the rich, like, wow, I wish I could be them, and then realizing that it's not really what you want. I mean, there's so much more to the book than that, but it's also a trilogy, which I've only read the first one, but there's two others, and I can't provide any input on those, but I think they're probably going to be really good too. I need to read them. So yeah, that's that one.
All right.
That's all I got to say.
Sounds interesting.
All right. I'm terrible at remembering what I read.
Do Hatchet, man. You were just talking about.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about doing it. But yeah, let's just talk about. It's been so long since I've read it.
Doesn't he fight a polar bear?
I can't remember.
Yeah. He makes a bow and arrow out of a shoestring. I remember that.
All I remember is the actual scene that I made in my head while I was reading the book, and I can see
when he crashes,
when he lands in the forest, everything like.
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
And he only had a hatchet, right? Is that?
Yeah.
Didn't he find something that like taught him?
I think
he had a survival book, I think.
Yeah. No, he learned it from before, because he was
from
a Boy Scout or something, right?
Oh.
I don't know. I
feel like he had something that he referenced, if I remember right.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're going off fragments here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been. We probably read this in middle school, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Or earlier.
But that I just feel like it's really interesting. Like for me, that I can't remember much about it unless I made it up in my head, like imagery wise, and that just goes to show you that like I'm a visual person. But like did you guys ever do that when you were reading a book? Like
oh yeah,
visually like.
I always try to visualize stuff.
But did you like remember it more later on than the actual like.
No, I remembered like overall themes, like what actually happened, more so than
Gotcha.
like specific images. But I do have a very definitive image of him using a shoestring as a bow and arrow, and that's why I keep
Yeah.
coming back to that. That's all I remember.
So the book is by Gary Paulson, and so the hatchet comes from his mother gave him a hatchet shortly before the plane departed. Like that just seems weird. She
First
gave him
of
a
all,
hatchet.
how does he get a hatchet on a plane?
Well, it was a single engine Cessna. He was just like it was just him and the pilot, and he was going to visit his father in the oil fields of northern Canada. But anyway, yeah, it's weird that she gave him a hatchet. You can get a hatchet on a plane on your carry-on.
You can?
Yeah.
I feel like that would be
That's
sketchy.
illegal. I thought you could get one
Before 9/11, you could take a machete on a plane, dude.
Oh, well, that's before 9/11. Though.
Yeah.
I mean,
in
but like I said,
time
this is a
period,
single engine Cessna.
yeah.
This is not like
Okay.
this is like
Yeah.
just some.
I was just trying to make a
He
joke.
probably
about
knew this guy or something.
Let me see what you got up in there.
I mean, this is a good example though of those books I'm talking about that we were kind of required to read in middle school. That I actually enjoyed a lot of the books that they made us read. I didn't have the motivation to read them because I was being told to by the man, you know. But
Yeah.
But actually reading them, like I really liked a lot of them, and you start to understand why they require these certain things. Like the most distinct one I remember hating, but then in retrospect loving, was To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yep.
The book was so slow, and I didn't like the writing, but like the messages it has to tell are very relevant and very important.
Well, this book in particular, I actually feel like had a pretty big impact on me because, you know, my dad he wasn't like super outdoorsy, but he taught me an appreciation for the outdoors. And when I was a kid, I legitimately wanted to be a mountain man. Like that's what I was wanting to do. I wanted to have a cabin, and I think that book was a big part of it. There's another one too that I can't remember, and Where the Red Fern Grows too. He had a hatchet in that, and this book's just like it made me want to go be outdoors. There's a movie too, Jeremiah Johnson. That movie's so awesome. You guys.
What is it called?
Jeremiah Johnson.
That's the name of it?
Yeah, it's like a western, but survival.
Oh yes.
Dude,
Where
oh
he's
my gosh.
It's like a.
Yes, and he goes and like
It's
kills this whole band
It's a whole meme. Like there's a meme about it, and I was
Oh.
like wondering who that was. I told my dad, like, Dad, do you know this? And he's like, Oh yeah, that's Jeremiah Johnson. I'm like,
Yeah.
What?
But
Yeah,
that's
dude.
my point. Is like we were required to read this. It's not like I made a choice to, but it had such a big impact on me, and that's what
Yeah.
books can do. And it's not like when you're a kid and you're more impressionable, but even now, like reading books can change your life.
Yeah.
And
I kind of felt the same way about Lord of the Flies, because this was another one of those situations where it was kind of a survival situation, and it felt that one, like, I really liked the writing, and it was really visceral. You felt like the emotions of all these characters. I mean, it had a different goal as a novel, but I think it has some of the same themes.
I never read
Hatchet.
that one. I'm gonna
Lord
write
of
that
the
down.
Flies? Just
Read
it's
it.
yeah.
It's
Scary because if you get a bunch of kids together on an island, you feel like that would happen 90%
well,
of the time.
it was basically an argument to like that everybody is innately evil.
Oh.
So it goes really deep into like psychology of like these kids got on an island and they became evil basically
Oh.
because they already were.
It's not that they don't become they already were evil, but like civilization it helps make people less evil.
Yeah. Basically, like civilization is what keeps us. Like if civilization didn't exist, we'd just be murdering each other and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Do you guys believe that?
No, because what about before major civilization? There was tribes and stuff. And
I think it's lack of morals is what I think. Like if you take like people in a tribe that have good morals, they're not going to go slaughtering other tribes unless they like have to
I don't think it's
defend
morals. I
themselves.
think it's survival. They know they can't survive without each other, so like you pick your tribe, but then you come up against another tribe. You don't have the morals.
No, I mean,
you're still
but
just gonna
even
kill them.
intertribal, like even in intertribes, is there killing and murdering? Probably not, because there's.
But I don't think it has anything to do with morals. I think it has to do with like these people are helping me
Yeah.
survive.
So it's more survival.
we also have love too, which I think.
Yeah, love,
throws a bit-
emotions. Yeah,
Yeah, because if you fall in love with somebody, then you have that compassion in you, and that's like something.
but
else.
also it opens the door for like,
If somebody touches them, then you
hate.
go and kill them.
because once you love somebody, you can also hate somebody. You know.
Yeah. So the argument for morals is like if you are okay killing someone from another tribe, but you don't kill anybody from your tribe, that doesn't mean you have good morals.
That's true. Yeah, it just means you just like your tribe. You
Yeah.
don't like those other people.
Well,
I
you
don't
have
know.
at that point you have boundaries, but I guess that's where civilization
Yeah.
starts.
So that's
And
really
politics.
interesting to think about. Like, I don't know.
Well, that's why Lord of the Flies is so interesting because it does make you question like what civilization is good for, and it's good for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Ready to move on?
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. I want to present my love letter to Brandon Sanderson, who is my favorite author now, and probably my favorite author for the rest of my life, because he's going to be writing a book a year until we all die. Brandon Sanderson wrote these big, chunky, thick books I've got here. So I found this guy. So a few years ago, I wanted to be a creative writer. I wanted to write fantasy novels. This is like what I wanted to do with my life. So I was looking up videos, like how to be a fantasy writer. And this guy, Brandon Sanderson, pops up. He is a creative writing professor at a university in like Utah or something along those lines, and he posted his lectures on YouTube. So I sat there and watched like hour and a half long college lectures of this guy teaching creative writing, and was just like totally into him. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has ever sought out college lectures and just watched them, like, but it's, you got to be really passionate about something to want to do that.
Yeah.
And so I figured after I watched all these lectures, like, I need to go read some of this guy's work because I really liked him as a person. He was a great teacher. So I went and read some of his work. And the first book I picked up was Elantris, which is one of his standalone novels, so it's not in a series of novels. You can just read it by itself and not need anything else. And it was actually also the first novel that he got published, and it is knock out of the park. One of the best fantasy novels I've ever read. And so I kept reading more. He has this series called Mistborn, which is probably his most beloved series, and then these big thick books like the Way of Kings and Words of Radiance are like 1,000-page novels, and they're part of a 10-part series. He's writing a huge epic. So, I mean, think about that. That's going to be like 10,000 pages.
It's crazy.
Of fantasy there. But what I really like about Brandon Sanderson is his structure. And what I mean by that, so, for example, in Mistborn, there's this magical system that exists where people have different powers. But unlike Harry Potter, where you don't really know where those powers come from, and there's no real restrictions to them, it seems like. It seems like you can kind of do whatever. In Mistborn, people can do, so some people can, so it's all based on metals. There are 10 different types of metals, and people can usually only burn like one type of metal. So if you can burn, I can't really remember, but if you can burn like iron, you get stronger. Or if you can burn copper, you can like read people's minds or something. Like, so it's based off this system that has these very like structured restrictions basically. And so when you build a magic system like that like builds you into this box. Like, but people always say creativity is at its finest when you actually create restrictions for yourself, and that's where his creativity comes out. And so like all of his books kind of use that same structure, and like he gives himself rules to write by, and that allows you to identify too with characters, because like in Harry Potter, when there's just endless, you can do anything. It's hard to identify and it's hard to relate to some of those characters. But when you have restrictions within your magic system, it creates scenarios for these characters that you can actually relate to, because they get in situations that they can't get themselves out of just by waving a wand.
Yeah.
And just in general, his writing style is so incredible, and his world building, his storytelling. I mean, if anybody asked me, and I heard an argument the other day about this YouTuber who does fantasy stuff, like he might be known in 50 years as the greatest fantasy writer of all time, because he's so prolific. He writes, I mean, he's always writing a book. He comes out with a book a year. He's not like George Martin, who's taken 7 years to finish the last Game of Thrones book. But like, that's a crazy statement to make, because you've got George Tolkien, you've got George R.R. Martin, you've got all these super high-profile fantasy writers, and people are starting to have him in the conversation of best fantasy writers of all time.
Would you say that those books are compared to the Lord of the Rings?
Well, comparatively, so here's what Tolkien did with Lord of the Rings. He took 30 years of his life to build Middle Earth, right? And then you wrote the Lord of the Rings. Brandon Sanderson has the same level of world building, but he doesn't take 30 years to do it. He writes one of these 1,000-page books like every year, and he still has the same level of world building as Tolkien did. He's got the same vision.
But do you think without Tolkien he wouldn't have been able to do that?
Oh, definitely not. He's derived his style from a bunch of different other authors, and I think you had to have, like, Tolkien's a grandfather of fiction. If he didn't write Lord of the Rings, not fiction, fantasy would look completely different than it does today. But that doesn't take away from Brandon Sanderson's works. I think that just adds to him. I mean, I just think he's incredible. And I think if you're trying to get into fantasy, like, I personally would suggest reading some of these first and then going to read some of the old, like Lord of the Rings and some of the older fantasy books, just because these are so much more digestible and so much more modern, and they're like my favorite books right now.
Yeah, I'm wanting to read one now because you
Yeah,
you
and
gave
I
it
was
a really
like,
good.
Which one do you think I would like, Clayton? I'm more of like big, like, well, I don't know. It's hard for you, I guess.
Well, it depends on what you want. Like the Way of King or
Like,
the
tell me about
Stormlight
it.
Archive, these big ones. This is his big epic fantasy, which you got to get really invested in. It's a huge world he's building, and it's a really big time investment because this is gonna be a 10-book series. But for example, Mistborn is like a 3-book series where it's pretty easy to get into and pretty easy to read. But I would suggest anybody starting with Brandon Sanderson just to start with Elantris because it's a one-off novel, not a lot of investment. You can just read this one novel and you don't have to read the whole series because there's not a series. I don't know. He's got a lot more than this too. I mean, he's written, I don't even know how many books, man.
I'm a big fan of, like, I think in terms of fantasy, I'm a big fan of the antagonist or the what is it? Protagonist, antagonist? What's the hero?
The hero's the protagonist.
Protagonist. I'm a big fan of the protagonist dealing with the duality of, like, having power and, like, that Mistborn
Dude,
sounds
the
pretty
protagonist
good.
of Way of Kings, or at least one of the protagonists in Way of Kings, that is exactly him. Like, he has his power basically given to him for whatever reason, and he kind of struggles with, like, does he even deserve this?
Yeah, like, I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he writes a lot of his characters like
Because
that
I
way.
get tired of listening and watching movies or listening to books where the hero knows he's super powerful and he's just like, yeah, I'm super powerful.
Oh man, none of these are like that. Like, he doesn't write to any of those, like, easy tropes. He really just makes them unique, and then he always has conflict within the main character.
Nice. Is it a hard antagonist to fight?
What?
Like, is it like a bunch of antagonists or just one big antagonist? Or
So this is more of like a big war going on.
Okay.
But
so
then there are
that's-
also like small antagonists that they have to get by. This is more of like one big antagonist. Mistborn is where they're fighting one dude. But I've only read Mistborn. I haven't read the other two in the series yet, so I'm not sure how it goes. But
Nice.
I don't know. I just over my entire I'm only 23, but over my entire life, and I love reading. These have been my favorite books, and I've never been more excited to go pick up another book by the same author and just keep reading his stuff.
That's how I felt with Percy Jackson.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like, I know exactly what you mean.
Do you?
And I knew you'd do that. But, like, I'm sure you think the same way with
Yeah, I used to have Alex Rider.
Yeah.
That I would just like I dived into the.
Alex
So one
Rider.
of his concepts too, when he's teaching creative writing, is you got two types of writers. You got writers who create stained glass windows, and you got writers who have just clear, basic, plain windows. And what he means by that is some people like to write really flowery language, kind of hard to read, but like really pretty words, and that's a stained glass. Like, you're having to view the story through the stained glass. You're not getting a super clear picture of it sometimes. He's more of the regular clear window type guy. He tries to write kind of plain language that really portrays the story in a really clear way. And I really like that too.
Sweet. I want to read them now.
Good. That was my intent. by talking about them so passionately. Okay, Brandon Sanderson, if you're listening, reach out to me. We'll have a bite to eat together. And he also has a podcast, 15, what's it called? I don't know, I can't remember the name of it right now, but
We'll just reach out to him on Twitter or something.
yeah, he's on the Magic subreddit all the time. He plays a ton of Vintage and Legacy and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyways, I've been talking too long. Let's move on.
Okay.
Let's each do one last one.
Yeah, I have another one. This is gonna be my last, and I didn't have this on my list originally, but it's kind of a genre we haven't crossed yet. So mine is gonna be Frankenstein. And I don't know. I feel like there's a theme within my books where I like when something like progresses, like it starts, and then it changes, and that's how Frankenstein was. It's the progression and how the journey of this one monster, and it's in a lot of ways it's kind of a tragedy. But anyways, it's not about the book here. I want to talk about like horror. I think horror sometimes to me like embodies what I want a book to be. Like I want a book to be something that like draws me in and that's just super cozy, and then like I'm next to a fireplace and I have some coffee or something. And to me, like horror is the perfect version of that.
You want to be super cozy next to a fireplace? I
Yeah,
feel like
man.
you'd be like paranoid, like somebody's watching
like,
through the window.
But horror does that. Like it draws you in and like it captivates you, and like I don't know, but there's something about like just a scary book or scary movie, like being in the dark next, like I don't know. To me, that's just more of a.
I got you.
That's just a detail, but I don't know. I like that aspect of books. Like there's been some of my best memories when I was just reading around family or friends, and I was just cozy.
Dude,
and I know that sounds silly, but
Goosebumps did that to me.
Yeah, dude, Goosebumps.
Dude, those are freaky.
I used to get a Goosebumps book, go home and read the whole book that night because they're so short and so easy to read. But I mean, it did give that feeling like they were kind of childish and funny, but also I was reading them at a young age, so it was kind of it kept you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, I don't know why I associate horror with that, because fantasy is just the same, or science fiction. But sometimes there's something like comforting about horror. Is that weird?
Here's what I think.
It's not even a genre. It's like what do you call it? It's not emotion, but it's like it's not theme. It's like resonance, maybe. Like it resonates a totally different thing. Like with Lord of the Rings, it's more like glory, hope, like redemption, and like
this is just about like
and this
make you feel creepy.
Yeah, this was about like fear, anxiety, like.
But you're outside of it, so it's not like you feel these emotions.
Yeah.
But sometimes you do. Like H.P. Lovecraft, I had to like stop reading his book one time because I genuinely felt like there was something wrong with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was like alive and it was coming for you at night.
Like, so I think every good fiction, every good fantasy has to have an element of suspense, and if it doesn't, the pacing is wrong, and you don't feel like you want to keep flipping the pages and you want to keep reading. So bridge that gap. On the other side of the spectrum, you got horror, which like that's all it's about, is creating suspense and creating emotion. So I think that's why you're like drawn to those, is because I think in any good fiction book that's what we're looking for, and then just horror just like goes all out and does it just all the way. Yeah.
Frankenstein in particular is a really good horror because it's not just about that like shock and all, but it is really about that emotion. Like it kind of takes you on a wild ride, and it's
well, that's why I like horror movies, is because they're basically their complete and total goal is to incite some emotion, which is really the goal of all movies. But horror movies, like I guess fear is such an visceral emotion.
I think it's just dread. I like dread better. Does that make sense?
But that's a different thing.
It's not the same? Okay.
I'd say fear and dread are different.
Well, let's use an example. That way we can get on the same page.
What do you mean?
Like, crap, what's a horror movie? What's a horror movie that, like, alright, for instance,
I've never felt a sense of dread from a horror movie.
Like, for me, it was The Woman in Black. Like, I just dreaded that movie. Like, not, like, I didn't want to go see it dread, but, like, when I was in the movie theater and I was watching it, I was just like, every moment was like the feeling of dread, of like the anxiety,
I think you were scared and fearful. I don't think you were dreading it. I think dread is something that you don't want
Not
to
dread.
happen.
Doom.
Uh,
Doom. The
okay.
like just feeling of doom.
Lack of hope,
Yeah, like or just like I
depression.
don't know. It's just like the black cloud you feel when you watch
Yeah.
horror movies, like that. That's what I'm
Well,
talking about.
some horror movies do that, some don't. I'm not a huge
That's
fan
what makes
of
them
those
good
because
and
that's just
what
like
makes them bad.
depressing. I don't know. I like
Yeah.
horror movies that like it's more like a roller coaster than like drag you through the mud type.
I
Because
got
like
you,
H.P.
yeah.
Lovecraft is drag you through the mud, and when I read his novel, like to me it did exactly what he wanted to. H.P. Lovecraft would be so honored to hear that I stopped reading his book because it freaked me out that bad.
Yeah, definitely.
But like I don't enjoy that because it got me so deep, and I'm like I don't feel right reading this. Like this is just
Dude.
too much for me.
That's why I enjoy horrors with like the protagonist, like The Witcher 3. I played the game. I know it's a game, but like it's also it was a book series before, and it makes it easier to read books where the protagonist is like almost like your protector from like you being creeped out
Yeah,
enough
I like that.
to not like read it.
That's cool.
You need like a protagonist to like get behind and like follow him through the journey and
Yeah.
not like
But in horror, the
put you in the
protagonist
front.
is just the victim, just being
I,
crapped on.
I definitely
See, that
think
makes you like
Yeah.
the watcher, and you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
I think
I don't
that's the
wanna watch
number
this.
one thing that sets apart a good horror movie, and I'm saying movie, but book works here also. If you have a protagonist that they actually build the character, they make you relate to the character, and you care for the character, and they have a good personality, that's gonna be such a better horror movie. When they just, hey, here's the protagonist. 5 minutes later, they're just like, all right, let's get into the horror. There's no stakes involved. You don't
Yeah.
really care that much, and I think that's what. There's so many terrible horror movies
Yeah,
out there,
it
and that's
almost
because they
becomes
don't
campy.
build character.
Yeah, exactly. No, keep going. I'm just adding to it.
I'm done.
I'm done with this too. So go for it, Hunter.
I was just gonna say it.
That was such an abrupt transition.
No, I was just.
I'm done here. Please stop talking about horror and talk about your next book.
I was agreeing with Clayton because, yeah, what Clayton was saying is it just becomes campy. Like when
Yeah.
it, like
It's true.
I don't know. I just, yeah,
I agree.
like Scream.
Dude,
That's-
don't talk about it. Scream is the best horror
Not-
movie of all time.
No, not okay. Scary movie. They
That's
make
not
fun
a
of,
horror movie.
They make fun of Scream in the Scary Movie.
Yeah, because it's one of the greats.
Well, I mean,
And
I
I'll
don't
tell you,
know.
it's one of the greats because of.
Scream is a little campy for me.
I don't think you know what campy means.
It means it's like, all right, for me, campy means that like they're being serious, but everyone's laughing at it.
You laughed at Scream?
I didn't really laugh at it. I'm just like, because look, you watch Scream 2, and then you find out who it is. It's like, oh.
You
it's
find out
just
who it
the-
is in Scream 1.
No. In Scream 2, it's a whole. Never mind. It's just. In Scream 2, it's the girl, and she's, the girl that kills everyone.
Yeah.
And you just
Wait,
find it out. It just makes it.
They become campy because they start mimicking other movies. Scream didn't do that. The original Scream was really original, and it was a very good horror movie. Campy is more of like these horror movies that are just mimicking all of these movie tropes that other horror movies have done.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't
Maybe
think
I just
Scream
thought it
can be
was-
campy.
I guess I just thought it was campy because I didn't know that was the original one, like where it all started. The movie that I think, like, I Know What You Did Last Summer is probably one of the first movies I watched that's like Scream, but I didn't realize.
But it came out
Scream-
after Scream.
Yeah, and I didn't realize Scream was first. And Scary Movie ruined it for me. Actually, I think that's what it was. Is I watched Scary Movie before I even got into scary movies, and it just ruined. Like how they make fun of War of the Worlds, they make fun of Scream, the Ring, where the girl crawls out. Those movies.
I don't care how much you make fun of The Ring.
I'm not making fun of the Ring. I don't want to watch that.
I'm
'cause
just
that
saying.
looks
I'm saying I
scary.
don't care how much you make fun of it and make a parody of it. That's terrifying. You got a little girl like coming after you, dude.
Dude,
Yeah, well,
watching
we
The
need to
Grudge
talk about
was
horror
terrifying.
Because
Did podcast episode horror movies.
I'm down for
Let's
that.
do it.
We need to wait till October though.
Yeah, dang it.
All right, coming to you in October.
Scary movies.
All right,
Ooh,
Hunter, we still got to move on to your last book, and
Dude.
we're running on time here.
Just skip me. I don't really have. Well, I guess.
I've been wanting to hear that from you all day, man. Just skip me.
Now you should just spend a long time on a book in spite.
Yeah, I'm just gonna spin along. Okay. Lemony Snicket. It goes well with what we're talking about
Those are good.
because Lemony Snicket, it's the complete opposite of what. Because the whole point of that book is to make you like feel like eventually everything's gonna be okay, and then the next book comes out and it's like everything's finally okay.
That's the
No.
doom. That's the gloom feeling you were just talking
Yeah,
about.
that feeling of
That's
the gloom.
But at the
like-
same time, literally, he tells you at the beginning of every book, "Do not read this book.
I know. I
This,
love that.
this turns out terribly. It's not a happy ending." And then the ending of the last book is not even a happy ending. It's just like a cliffhanger. You don't even know what happens.
Yeah, and that's why I love that series because it is nothing like any other book you've ever read, and it's so like it's hard to explain.
I attribute Lemony Snicket, Series of Unfortunate Events, as the books that got me into reading because of that very reason. I picked up the book, and on the first page, the author says, "Don't read this book. Put it down." And I'm like, "Screw you, dude. I'm going to read the book now."
Yeah.
And then I just got super into them. I read all 13 of them, and that's what made me fall in love with the series, where I like to stay with the same characters for multiple books in a row. So like Harry Potter, and then that's why I'm really excited about the Stormlight Archive, Brandon Sanderson's series, because you get to stay with these same characters for so long. And that Lemony Snicket or Series of Unfortunate Events is what got that started for me.
Yeah, I just love how it's like, put this book down, don't read it. Like somebody's gonna read it now. That's perfect.
But then it
though.
also makes you think he's got to be lying. Like it's got to have a happy ending. But then you
Yeah.
get to the ending, it's like,
Well, that's what I was talking
it's
about.
not even that happy.
That's what I'm talking about. He makes you think that he's lying, but he's really not lying at the end of the whole thing. He's literally told you the truth. He told you everything out front, but you, in some part of your mind, you're like, no, there's hope in the end. And like, he's just like, no, I told you at the very beginning of the book.
So I tried to reread the first first Series of Unfortunate Events book not too long ago, and they're actually hard to read as an adult. Like they're so elementary school,
Yeah.
which is not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know.
It's just easier to like, I don't know why is that actually to think about that.
I think it's because I went in with these expectations of, man, these books were so like mind changing and like, but then I read it as an adult. I'm like, this is just too simple.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
Yeah,
I mean,
I
I'm
get
not
it.
saying that they're
No,
definitely
I
great
get
books.
what you said.
I
Yeah.
think you can. I think if I just like had gotten through it, like I only read the first couple chapters and I was like, I can't get into it. I did watch the Netflix series though.
Yeah. I actually stopped watching halfway through.
I thought it was good.
For me, it just got boring. I watched the first season, but the second season, I tried to watch it more and more.
I think the last season is the best season. I think it keeps getting better.
It does? Okay, I guess I'll have to start watching again. I just couldn't, like... I guess that feeling of gloom I just got tired of, and I was like, alright, I don't really want to watch this. I want to watch something that's going to make me feel better. But yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna finish it up here. I want to talk about some adult books. We've been talking about kids' books. Not really. But I do want to talk about some nonfiction, is kind of what I mean by that. And I have a million books on my list, but I'm just going to talk about one that's not even here, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. This book is all about deconstructing how humans form habits and how we can change our bad habits, change our good habits, create good habits. And for me, it got me in this mindset of most of the things that I do in life that are like rote or just like daily tasks are because of habits. And that really was actually encouraging to me because that meant I could kind of be in control of my life. If there's something bad going on, I can change a habit and most likely change the outcome. Like I eat a lot of fast food. That's a habit. And it can be changed by changing up the cues that make me perform this habit or whatever. It just it's kind of weird. It made me feel like I'm a robot, but then at the same time, it explains like how those habits, how you're so in control of your habits, so you're not really a robot because you're in control, but then you are a robot because like most humans are habitual creatures. Like I don't know. It was really interesting. It really opened up my mind to like I can be in control of like what I am and who I am.
Yeah.
I like books that challenge me. Like I said, I've gotten into those a little more. I haven't really gotten to a whole lot of those. I did read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is more about finances and stuff.
Yeah.
What?
That guy, like, I've never read that book, but I've seen some YouTube videos of that guy, and
I'm gonna agree with what you're about to say.
he's just gotten to the point where he's over monetizing it.
Yep.
And
No, I actually went to like one of his things. It was like near us now. It was a course, or he was like selling some kind of education thing. It was just like so salesman, you know. Like I was like, ugh.
yeah,
But his book has some. It's a good book. I mean, there's a reason it's so popular, you know. But
yeah.
Yeah. I think mine would be like the adult book would be the 12 Rules to Life. I know I keep talking about it, but like that's exactly what he was talking about in one of the rules, like breaking habits. Like,
yeah, those are sometimes the most
it's
important
so
books.
weird though when you start reading it. Like if you get somebody else to study you, it's so easy for them to see it, but it's so hard for you to see your own habits because you think in your mind, I'm doing this because I want to do this, not because like, and somebody else telling me I shouldn't do it because it's a habit. No, I'm doing it because I want to do it. And you keep telling yourself that. But then when you have somebody, when you do it yourself, when you take a step out of yourself and look at what you're doing in life and like look at the habits you have, it blows your mind. And it almost makes it to where it's like,
See, I
know.
think Charles Duhigg's going about it in a little different way of like, you don't need to be in control. If you set up a good habit of going to the gym and it's totally habitual, you don't need to feel like it's your choice. Because if you just get in the habit of doing that, and you can make it a habit to where you do it without even thinking about it, that's a good thing. Whereas a lot of people talk about habits where of like, oh, you need to be conscious of your habits and be aware of what you're doing, and you need to make sure this is what you want to do. I don't think that's not the way I like to look at it. If something is a good habit, I want to be able to make it a habit and then forget about it, and it's just something I do automatically.
yeah. I was
Whereas,
just talking mostly for like bad habits.
Yeah, for bad habits, it's all about being conscious and then being able to make a change.
Yeah, and then good habits you'd want to make them unconsciously.
Well, either way, I think it takes a lot of effort to change, but that's why books are so great because they're such a good launching point.
Yeah,
It's a great place to
man,
start.
books just open you up to new perspectives. They teach you so much.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where most learning comes from. Now we have the internet, so it's a little different, but for most all of time, we've just learned from books.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
speaking of learning from books, I hope you stuck around this long because we're going to be reading a book together, the three of us, and we hope that you will read it with us so that when we eventually talk about it, we can have some discussion with the audience as well. So we're going to be reading, we wanted to have an episode on finances and money and stuff, but we didn't feel super equipped to do so with our rudimentary knowledge, so we wanted to read a finance book and then have a discussion about it on the cast. So I don't think we're going to set a date for it now. We'll figure that out and tell you guys whenever that episode's coming up. But we're going to be reading The Financial Diet by Chelsea Fagan. And yeah, it's a book about kind of young adult finance, basic budgeting, investing, stuff like that. And we're going to try to learn a little bit about finances and then have a cool conversation about it. So if you guys want to read along, like I say, in the next couple episodes or so, we'll talk about when we're actually going to do that, because I don't know how long it's going to take me to read a book.
I haven't seen how long it is yet. I mean, I can't
imagine it being too long, but we'll
Yeah.
see. Another quick announcement: we are going to be finishing season 1 of this podcast next episode 20. The only thing that means is there's no real changes, but we're going to be taking a 1-week break. So after we release episode 20, the next week there will not be a podcast, and then the next week there will be a podcast, and we will be starting season 2. Big changes coming in season 2.
Oh yeah. Keep your eyes open. Keep your buttons clicked on the like and the share.
Click those buttons.
Always be clicking your
Oh,
buttons.
don't forget to subscribe.
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 Okay, so I think the GoPro cut out.
It
by
did
the way.
a long time ago. I've been
It
doing
wasn't
it.
that long ago.
It was like 30 minutes ago.
We got half of it.
Okay, so if you're watching
I
YouTube,
just hope we got that part.
we've probably already put a little text message on there saying sorry about this, but we're going to try to figure this out. This is the first time we've shot the video version of it, so we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and the GoPro don't last that long.
I think it might have died. because it definitely had enough memory space on it. It had 8 hours of record time.
Yeah, I think it died. Yeah.
Which is weird because I've recorded things like an hour and a half before. I guess we talked a lot before this. We'll have to do better next time.
Yeah, we'll just turn it on right before we start, I guess.
Yeah.
This could not.
When I turned it on, I was like, we're gonna start within the next 10 minutes, and then we started like 30 minutes later.
Yeah. So it's been an hour and 56 minutes.
We have to warm up first.
Now.
We gotta warm up. Talk.
Okay. Anything else you guys want to say about books before we sign it off?
I'm good.
Read them. Don't forget books exist. Television.
Yeah,
internet,
like a lot of people
everything.
get out of high school, get out of college, they're like, I'm never touching a book again. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Go pick up a book. Go read a book.
If you want to change yourself, if you're trying to change yourself for the better, books are the way to go because you can watch
First and
a YouTube
foremost, if
video.
you're trying to change yourself, listen to this podcast. Secondly, read books.
Yeah, there you go. Because if you go on, I've done this before. If you go on YouTube and try to like 5-minute videos about how to life-changing, 5 top things you can do to change your life, or like that's not going to do anything but to tell you titles. They're only
It's
telling
going
you
to tell you the
titles.
books to read, and then you got to actually do the
then
work.
it's going to tell you books to read. Like literally, if you go to YouTube to find knowledge, you're just finding outlets to point you to books. So
Yeah.
just go read books.
Sometimes
So-
the value of reading a book comes from like the investment of time you put into it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like if you listen to a 5-minute YouTube video and it says the same thing that a book did, I think you're more apt to actually listen to what the book said than the video. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And also, I could probably talk about books for another couple hours, so maybe in the future we'll do another one of these that we get more specific, or
Yeah.
maybe we do just a fantasy book episode. Maybe I don't know, whatever. We'll
I think-
figure it out.
We can all talk about that. I can keep talking.
Yeah, so maybe in the future, but for now, this was fun. Hope you guys enjoyed. Give us a like, give us a comment, and whatnot.
Godspeed and good conversations.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Young Adult's Guide to Planet Earth. We hope you enjoyed the conversation.
If you want to join the conversation, make sure to join us on Twitter at Young Adult Guide and Instagram at Young Adults Guide.
And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell if you want to be notified. Like, comment, and join the conversation.
Talk to you next week.